Hi, good evening. Welcome to this is our third revision session for the Level 2 Business Environment Synoptic unit. If this is your first time with us, then hope you enjoy it. We're going to be looking at task 3 this week. It's very much a wordy task. You can definitely put your calculators away for this one. We're going to be looking at areas covering corporate social responsibility, ethics and sustainability. So we're going to have a look at that. And I didn't say before, but my name's Catherine and I'm one of the distance learning tutors here at First Intuition. So yeah, I think we'll get started and see how we get on with this task 3. So don't need to repeat myself, but we are covering these 3 main areas tonight. So corporate social responsibility, ethics and sustainability. Task 3 is a wordier task. We're not into the free writing stuff here yet. This is still ticking the boxes, filling in blanks from drop downs and such like, pick lists and true false. However, it is one of the higher mark questions on this exam. There are a couple of 14 markers on this exam. There is a 22 marker, which is by far the biggest. But as I say, this one's probably sitting with another task in second place in terms of the marks available. So if you can really give this a good go, it means that you're getting a really decent chunk of those marks. And if you're needing 70% to pass, wanting to get good chunk of marks here to really help us push us on that way. So just a little bit, first of all, before we look at some questions about these 3 areas. What's corporate social responsibility, what is sustainability, and what covers when we talk about ethics. So in a nutshell, corporate social responsibility, which we have short to CSR in this case because it just makes it a lot quicker. We're looking at how organisations sort of respond and sort of cover or manage their responsibilities towards society. So businesses are not necessarily acting alone. They have probably a physical location somewhere in a community. They probably employ local people. They supply to other local companies potentially. Have other companies that are local supply them. So it all fits into this kind of web of a community, and then that can be further reaching as well, nationally, internationally. And it's really important that companies do take some accountability for this corporate social responsibility, that they're not just acting for their own interests, but then maybe looking at broader and wider interests as well and making sure they're making the best decision overall. The responsibilities that a business may have to undertake in this area can change. They may, evolve over time. We can see that, environmental agenda has become a lot more important and a lot more talked about for businesses and what their corporate agenda is. So it's looking at that. It's also looking at this area here, and there is a question about this that we're going to look at later. It's looking at the different stakeholders of a business. When I say stakeholders, what do I mean? Pop an answer in the chat box as to what you think. When I say stakeholder, who are they? What are they? You can give me some examples as well. Just want to see what you're thinking when we talk about stakeholders. We'll talk this. Ah, perfect. Yeah, that's a really good answer. Thank you. Yeah, people who have some form of interest in the business. So they may be internal. So we might be looking at staff, people who work for the business, the owners of the business. Yep, something like that. And then you've got external. So you've got you've got your customers. You've got your suppliers. Example, shareholders. Yeah, shareholders kind of probably sit in that internal one. I've just noticed that pop up. But from the external ones, you've also got things like the bank, because it might be that you have a loan with them or an overdraft with them and they want to see how the business is performing. I mean, ultimately, the government also has an interest, because, you know, if you're doing well and making a profit, you should be paying some tax on that, and that will help to fund whatever the government want to or need to pay for. So there's just a few to keep an eye on, and we'll have a look at a question relating to stakeholders later on. Yeah, so the company's looking to see what the priorities are for those stakeholders. What matters to them? What things, other issues like social, ethical issues. You know, are we supporting the community? Are we being fair and honest? Are we being confidential? You know, all those, it's a very broad remit that we're looking at with this. Obviously, if we're going to be doing the right thing, this can sometimes come at a bit of a cost. You know, it might be that if they're looking to I don't know, move away from plastic packaging. It's a really sort of common example, you know, now of sort of not having plastic packaging, having paper or cardboard packaging. That may cost more than the plastic packaging that they used before, and they may need to invest in new ways of dealing with those recyclable resources, new machinery, etc., to be able to package the products with paper or whatever. However, by doing that, they may be getting a better reputation from it, because people are often quite keen to be environmentally friendly, particularly now, and they may think, well, I'm going to buy from that company because, you know, they wrap everything up in paper rather than loads of plastic, and I don't want loads of plastic. I don't want to be doing that. You know, it can also mean that they do something that helps with employee recruitment, so it might, or retention, making employees feel valued, even if it's team building or things like charity, getting the staff to do charity events, you know, charity runs or whatever. It's a good team builder, but it's for charity, and it helps the local community, or a more wider community, depending on the charity that it does. It might help them to improve how they relate with their investors, because they're a stakeholder too, investors, shareholders, similar thing. It might mean that they can get new money out of things, new shareholders who are willing to invest in that company because of the extra things this company does as part of their corporate social responsibilities. So yeah, there's lots of, again, it may prove a bit more costly to be doing these things, but you've got these potential benefits which are hard to put a figure on, potentially, depending on what they are, but often it's kind of, is it worth doing? Are the benefits more than the costs for the business? So you won't be asked in this question to write about something like that in detail or anything, but it's just kind of having that knowledge so that you could then answer any sort of pick list or true false questions around that area. If we move on a bit further with this idea of corporate social responsibility, because it does tie in very well with sustainability. And when we talk about the word sustainability, you're probably looking at this word straight away. That being sustainable means being helpful and good to the environment, you know, not being wasteful, and not overusing resources. However, you've got these other two areas as well, which are the social aspect and the economic aspect. We call these three terms with relate to sustainability as your triple bottom line, which I'm hoping you'll have heard of before from your study of this unit, because it does feature. But again, that might be something that you asked about within this exam, you know, to know what those three areas are that make up the triple bottom line. Like with your corporate social responsibility, anything that you might do for sustainability reasons, again, will have some cost to the business. It can be significant at times, and obviously that does then mean less profit. It's going to reduce your bottom line in the end, the figure that you have. So you need to think about, again, like with corporate social responsibility, are the benefits better than the costs? Is it worth doing? Yeah. And you also want to think about things like, you know, if we don't do it, are we going to get damage to our reputation? Yeah. So damage to the business reputation, kind of, oh, my pen, there we go. You know, if we don't do something, you know, so if we continue to, I don't know, import items from abroad at great expense, due to, you know, if you're shipping things from abroad, you've probably got additional costs, but you've also got polluting factors. You know, bringing things over on tankers and things can be, you know, polluting to the environment. So obviously we are thinking about these three areas. We talk about the triple bottom line. So we've got our financial perspective, which is profit. Are we, you know, is it going to affect the bottom line of our finances? You've got your social aspect, which is people. We've talked about that a little bit before. And then the environmental factor, which is what's the impact to the planet. Okay, and again, you might be asked to link those three pillars to a scenario that's given in a table or something like that. But we have got a question on that later. The final area of interest in this task is one that comes up a lot because it relates to an AAT, something that is AAT related from the heart, really, rather than just specifically accountancy related, and that is ethics and the fundamental principles of ethics for accountants. Yeah. So when we talk about ethics, we're not really following rules, we're following principles about what's the difference between a right decision and a wrong decision with a particular situation. Yeah. So how we conduct ourselves when we're relating with others. And there's been it's fairly topical because there's been a few things in politics recently with I think one of the reasons that the previous Prime Minister had to go, really, because there was an ethical issue with one of his staff and he was aware of it and didn't say. So you can just show us it can be very, very important. So yeah, it's about all of your relationships with people, not just in work, but also your personal relationships too, outside of work. And it can, you know, think about bringing the company that you work for into disrepute, you know, maybe dragging their name through the papers and things which you don't really want to do. The AAT have a code of ethics, as we would expect them to do, as they are a professional body. And they have 5 principles, okay, and these, if you can learn them now, if you haven't already, it will really, really help because it does come up again in level 3 and level 4. So it's always worth getting to know. So you've got these principles. I'm going to actually highlight them in a different colour because it's worth having. So you've got confidentiality. Yeah, hopefully fairly straightforward. We're talking about, you know, it's just that it's really difficult to describe it other than keeping information confidential. So not revealing information, basically, you know, unless you are told by a specific person that you can. And then the others are maybe not quite as, might not have necessarily come across these previously, unlike you with confidentiality. So you've got professional behaviour. Okay, so that's your, you know, don't bring the company into disrepute, basically. You know, don't get convicted of criminal, you know, criminal offence, or you know, behaving professionally at all times, which is what the clues in the name. So don't bring the company into disrepute, for want of a better phrase. Okay. You've then got another one which sounds similar but means something different, which is professional competence and due care. Yeah. So this has kind of 2 strands to it. Yeah. So you've got one which is kind of keeping your skills and your knowledge up to date. Hopefully going to try and fit everything in on this. But then your other strand is kind of, I'd say, not overreaching yourself, but only undertaking work that you're qualified to do. Yep, so for example, for us at the moment, we're looking at level 2 here. Yep, so if somebody, if you were at work and you're working in a finance role and someone said to you, can you do my tax return, please? Now, provided that you haven't got any previous knowledge from elsewhere, but if you've just got your level 2 AAT, as we're working on now, or you're working towards it, it would be unlikely that you would have the knowledge and skills required to do that tax return, because actually it's taught much later in the AAT levels. So it wouldn't be a responsible thing for us to do that. Yeah, so you need to make sure that you're not sort of winging it, for want of a better phrase, that you're only doing work that you are confident that you can do and you are qualified to do. Yeah, because otherwise you can get yourself into, well, bother, and it can be a very awkward situation as well. The final two, first one is integrity, which again might be a phrase that you're not that familiar with, but you'll probably be more familiar with this idea, and that integrity is basically meaning, it's another word for honesty. Yeah, so we need to be honest and upfront when we are dealing with clients, and if we're in an accountancy practice, but also our various stakeholders for a business as well, if we're working in industry. Yeah, so we're not looking to mislead them with whatever we tell them. And then the final one, which I think is often the most difficult one to remember, is objectivity. And what that basically means is that we are unbiased in our work. Yeah, so we're not being influenced by others to maybe change the accounts in some way, as an example. But yeah, those are your main 5. Those are the 5, and if you can remember them, understand what they mean, now it will make your life a lot easier. Yeah. So the ethical principles are, in effect, they're not rules, they are guidelines. Yeah, and that's why it says the AAT guidelines along with these ethical principles. We have 3 reasons why we need to follow these ethical principles. Okay, number 1, which is kind of important, is that we need to, it helps us to comply with laws and regulations. Yeah, so we're making sure we're not evading tax, for example, because the law says that you have to pay tax on certain things. The other reason that they have a code of ethics is because it helps to maintain their reputation. And if anybody does break these codes of ethics and is found out, then it can mean that you are not allowed to be a member of AAT anymore at the worst case, or you might be barred for a certain amount of time and then be allowed to come back. Yeah, and the other reason is protection of the public interest. So again, it kind of feeds back in with our corporate social responsibility in a way, that we as accountants, we are acting really for the interests of the public. We are looking after money from companies, and people have bought things from us in good intentions, and it's about obviously protecting that, because we're being honest and unbiased, and we are being professional in a nutshell, really. So done quite a lot of talking there. I think we'll have a look at some questions now. So there's 4 parts to this task, and lots of tables, lots of things to fill in. So we're going to start off here with part A. Okay, and this is a question on stakeholders. Said it would come up. So we've got 3 statements here, and we have to decide for each one what type of stakeholder they are using the pick list. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll highlight that, and then I'll highlight this down here so you can see that we've got 6 or so there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, we've got customers, the government, lenders, local community, shareholders, and suppliers. So for each one of those, we have to say which stakeholder the statement relates to, and then we have to decide whether that stakeholder is internal or external. So each statement describing a stakeholder, and we have to say which one is which. So what I'll do is I'll number them, and then it just makes it a bit easier if you're in the chat box just to say which one you think is which. So first one, these stakeholders can use their purchasing power to encourage the business to sell ethically sourced products. Number two, the stakeholders want to protect the long-term reputation of the business. And number three, these stakeholders can impose penalties on the business for acting unethically. Right, so have a think about maybe which of the ones from the pick list would fit for each statement, and then you can also say whether they are internal stakeholder or whether they are external. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see your thoughts on this before I go through it. So yeah, see what you think. Just give you a little bit of time to have a look at it. If I've not got any offers, I'll go through it. Not got any immediate offers, so I think what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll explain. Okay, so these stakeholders can use their purchasing power, yeah, to encourage the business to sell ethically sourced products. So this suggests some form of purchase. Ah, lovely, I've got some answers now, thank you. I was obviously a little bit too quick. Yeah, so we're looking for a stakeholder that is buying from us. Yeah, so the only one really that can relate to that is the customer. Yeah, they're the ones that buy from us. Yeah. In terms of internal or external, they aren't working for the business. They aren't involved in the business directly in any way. So they are an external stakeholder, which is mentioned in the chat. Hold on. Second one, so these stakeholders want to protect the long-term reputation of the business. So they are probably somebody who is internally involved with the business. Yeah, so I think we can tick internal for that because they're concerned about long-term reputation. Will the business continue to be able to trade and grow? You know, hopefully nothing bad's going to happen that means they can't do that. Okay, so we're looking at probably the people who own the business. We don't have owners as in our pick list. However, we do have shareholders, and that would fit really nicely for this one. Yeah. And then the final one, so these ones can impose penalties on the business for acting unethically. Whether they do or not is up to them. But we're looking for somebody that's maybe got a more overarching power. And we haven't got like professional body as one of our stakeholders. So we haven't got sort of like AAT, for example. The only one that maybe would work would be the government. Because obviously they can impose penalties. For example, you know, if you don't pay your tax on time, you can get a penalty on that. So that would be the government. In terms of their status as internal or external, as has been mentioned in the chat, they are an external stakeholder. They are another thing. They're not related to the business directly, like the shareholders or the staff would be. Yeah. So hopefully not too bad a question to get you started on this task. Right, this next one's quite interesting. Yeah, so they're asking which three of these four following things listed could be threats to our independence. Okay, now you can go about this question kind of one of two ways. You can think about the three that are, but if three are correct, that means that one isn't. Yeah, and that's how I would probably look at a question like this. Is there anything there that would stop us being independent? Is there anything that will stop us being unbiased or not be objective about something? Yes, what we're looking at here, we're looking at objectivity. Is there anything that might cloud our judgment, might make us act in a different way? Yeah, we've got three, so there's quite a few we can have a look at. Yeah, so we've got financial interest, we've got confidentiality, we've got a conflict of interest, and we've got familiarity. Yes, there's quite a few new terms there, but this does link in a little bit to your ethics side of things. Yeah, so when I say financial interest, what I mean is that you might have you might hold shares Oh, my pen's going really slow. In a company. Yeah, so you would benefit from them doing well, shall we say. Confidentiality is about, as we said before, you know, not revealing information unless you are specifically told that you can. Conflict of interest, so that might be that you've got, you know, you work for, sorry, so that's an example, e.g. you work for two competing clients, for example. So if you're working in an accountancy practice and you might have, I don't know, two companies that you do the books for, and they're both bakers, for example, both sell bread and all that sort of thing, have a bakery shop. They both work in the same area. So that's what we mean when we say conflict of interest, that you've got to act fairly for both of those, and that can be sometimes quite difficult. And then familiarity, so that's, you know, sort of, for example, you know, knowing somebody for a long time. Yeah. So which three of those might impact whether we can be independent or impartial when making a particular decision? First three. Oh, okay. I'm not totally convinced with having the first three. Definitely the first one, because if we have a financial interest in a company and then we're maybe, you know, completing the books for them, we want to make sure they've got as much profit. We would maybe look to have as much profit as possible available, because then we maybe get more in what we call a dividend, a payout to us as a shareholder. So obviously that's a bit of a tricky one. And I would agree that conflict of interest is also a threat, because you're maybe trying to, you can't be seen to be favouring one company over another if you've got, you know, competing clients. I would say that confidentiality is not a threat to independence. If you are maintaining confidentiality, then in a way you are being independent, because you are not allowing information that shouldn't be shared to be shared. You know, you're making sure that maybe you're not revealing information to a competing client. Yeah, so you were right on 1 and 3, but not necessarily with confidentiality in that second position. However, familiarity is a threat to independence. I'll give you an example. Another way that familiarity can show is that you might, you know, be working with somebody who is, you might say, oh, I'm studying accountancy, I can do the books for you, you know, because you've got a friend who has their own business. But if they are not necessarily acting in a truly ethical way themselves, you may have to bring their attention, you know, they're maybe not declaring all their income. And out of not wanting to upset them, it may be hard for you to raise that. So you're not being independent, you're not being unbiased. The fact that you know somebody very, very well and have known them for a long time may cloud your judgment. But I do agree, on a question like this, it is quite hard to know what's being asked, because it's looking at, this particular question is looking at a particular form of an ethical principle and what might affect your ability to act completely ethically when faced with situations like that. But yeah, I agree, it is a bit of a difficult one to know what's being asked sometimes with that. Hopefully a bit of a nicer question for part C. We've got 4 statements here, and we need to decide out of which 2 of them are our true statements. And again, you can approach this in 2 ways. You can look for the 2 that are true, which you will select, or you can discount get rid of the ones that are not true. If you look at a statement, oh, that's not true, you can know straight away that it's not the answer. So we've got, first of all, the AAT Code of Ethics is rules-based and we are legally obliged to follow it. Or on the flip side, it's going to be one or the other, isn't it? The AAT Code of Ethics is principles-based and it gives us a framework to follow. Number 3, the AAT Code of Ethics provides guidance and illustrations on how to apply it in practice, or the Code of Ethics provides instructions on how to apply it to all of the common problem situations. So which 2 do we think are true there? 1, 2, 3, and 4. We need 2 of those. Just want to see what you think. Yeah, I don't disagree that 2. We talked about that in the briefing, didn't we? That it's not a hard and fast set of rules. It's not rules based, and because it's not rules based, it's not really a legal obligation to follow it. It's a very good idea to follow it, but you're not necessarily going to be, you know, fined or be put into prison for not following it. It's a bit more, it's a bit less clear cut than that. So definitely. So yeah, I think the thing is it's kind of a case of it's either 1 or 2, and we've decided on 2, and then statements 3 and 4 kind of cover a similar thing, and it's 1 or the other. Yeah. So any thoughts on the second one, whether 3 or 4 is our second correct answer here? If not, don't worry, because I appreciate it's quite wordy and it's difficult to know the difference between the 2. For statement 3, it's saying that it provides guidance, yeah, and illustrations on how we would apply that guidance in practice. So maybe, you know, how you could apply your making sure that you're behaving confidentially at all times, because it will give you some ideas. Or on the flip side, you've got instructions rather than guidance on how to apply it to all of the common problem situations. So in a way, it will do one or the other, and there's one reason why it's the true answer that it is, which I can put you out of your misery and let you know. If you're not sure, it's number 3. Yeah, it's really, really hard for the AAT as a professional body, or any professional body, to be able to provide instructions. They're not instructing you on what to do. We're looking at principles, not rules here. So they will guide you. Yeah, they're going to guide you on how to apply those principles. Yeah, and it's really, really hard for them to apply it to all the common situations, because everything's different. So it's very hard for them to do that, which is why it's not that one. Yeah. So again, hope that explains why. But the key takeaway from this question is that it's a principles-based approach, and it's very much providing guidance rather than telling you what the rules are and how, and you know, and saying you must do this. There's not a must do about this code of ethics. It's a good idea too, and it's a good idea to maybe approach it in this way. For our final question on this task, part D, we have got a question on sustainability, just to finish off. Okay, so we've got a fictional company where the board of directors are meeting to discuss how to make the business more competitive. Yeah, so that's their goal. It's what they want to achieve out of this meeting. They want to increase their market share and sales revenue and profit. Yeah, so they're very much looking at the money side of things here. The directors have then realised that there are actions that they can take to improve, and alongside doing all of these 3 things, increasing all this lovely stuff that helps with our bottom line, they want to make sure that they're incorporating some sustainability ideas into their business operation. So they've got a few decisions to make as to whether they go through with these things or not. Yeah, so they're looking to protect the environment, improve society, and also provide some economic development. Yeah, so they've got 3 initiatives that they want to look at. Okay, and we've got them listed in this table here. And from the pick list that we're given at the bottom of the 3 pillars of sustainability that we talked about in the briefing, we have to match a pillar from the pick list with one of these sustainability initiatives. So again, I'll number them because it makes it a bit easier for those of you who have got the chat box available. So first one, once a year, the organisation is looking to give their employees a day to volunteer in the community. So is that economic, is it environmental, or is it social? The second one, they're looking to maybe donate offcuts and seconds to schools. So any maybe products they don't feel they can sell and make a profit on, they're going to donate to the schools. And then reinvesting profit back into the business. Is that economic, environmental, or social? Got a few things coming through in the chat box. So the first one, the decision has been taken that it is social, and I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah, so they're allowing their employees to do something that would potentially benefit the community, and you see this happening quite a bit with various companies. The Environment Agency is very, very big on doing that, giving employees days to volunteer on environmental projects. It helps the local community where they are, and it also helps the environment too. So it's kind of a double prong with that one. Okay, so number two, this is where it gets a bit more tricky. If they donate their offcuts and their seconds to the schools, is that environmental? Is it economic? Is it social? What do we think? Bearing in mind we've probably got one of each on a question like this, and that we've got 3 pillars and three scenarios. Do you think it's environmental, or is it social? Or sorry, is it environmental or is it economic? We've already used social. Interesting one. Not sure? Right. What about if we'll have a look at the third one, we'll come back to that second one. So third one is reinvesting profit back into the business. What do we think? Can we kind of get to the answer for number 2 by working out what number 3 is? Yeah, I would definitely say that number 3 is economic. Yes, that's looking at our profit, our bottom line, which therefore means, but someone did pop this in the chat, that the third one, sorry, the second one, well, it's been a long Monday, is our environmental pillar. Yeah. We've got an element of reusing here, which is good for the environment. We're not throwing away these offcuts of material or whatever, and the seconds, you know, we're not just throwing them in the bin, probably to go to landfill somewhere. We're actually donating them to be used again. So that's the idea of being reusing. But it's a difficult one, I think, because it mentions about schools. You think, oh, it might have a social bent to it, and I don't 100% disagree with that. But the fact that the first one definitely is a social impact means that kind of discounts that one. Yeah. But yeah, that is an example question for task 3, and we've done all bits of it now. But you can see that it's fairly wide ranging. I'm just going to stop my screen share there, and we'll just have a chat about other things. So yeah, in fact, I'm going to go back to the screen share because I've not made up my mind. Because that kind of brings us to the end of things for today. So I'll just pop that on there so you can see that. But yeah, I hope that was really useful. I hope you've had a bit of more confidence built with that one. So yeah, thank you very much. I'm just going to end the recording.